Hello everybody. Today we are talking about, don't worry, it's reusable. We're talking about Charles Dickens, and I am very, very excited. We have a lot of material to get through, and we are doing a full beat face. We're doing contour, we're doing heavy eyes, we're doing everything. So, I'm going to start with the eyes because they're kind of intense and we have a lot of information to get through. So, while I'm blending my primer, I'm going to explain to you why I chose the look that I did. So we're going for like a full bead look, right? And I'm going to create kind of a green gold eyeshadow. And the reason I'm going for a full face of makeup, one, because my last video was pretty natural. And today's video, because we're talking about Charles Dickens, he experienced poverty and wealth in his lifetime. And so he definitely understood high class society and what it meant to have great means and also what it meant to be starving and poor. And so we're going to go gilded on the eyes and full makeup, but we're still going to do some contour to suggest an emaciated face, if that makes sense. Well, I took down that gorgeous scenery. So we're also going to do a green smoky eye because London during this time was gross. I believe this is during the Industrial Revolution. Oh shoot, I'm forgetting now what the years of that are. But it was gross, and especially in the context that we're looking at Charles Dickens' life, it was not great. So what I want to do, I wanted to use this palette, but it's not quite having the colors I want. So we might have to just mishmash some other ones together. I'm going for like a deep green gold situation, but we're going to put kind of just a flesh colored shade all over the lid. So Charles Dickens was born in London, I believe, or Portsmouth, England. Excuse me. And we're starting with the eyes because this is a very eye heavy look, and so we can clean up the green and the shimmer later, but right now we're going to focus on getting the eyes to where we want. So Charles Dickens was born February 7th, 1812. What else happened in 1812, students? There was a war of 1812. In England. He's an English author. For those of you who maybe aren't as familiar, Charles Dickens most famously wrote A Christmas Carol, but he also wrote things like Tale of Two Cities and Great Expectations and Nicholas Nickleby, and we'll get into a bunch more later. But he was born into a very large family, and his dad was a little bit of a troublemaker. So finances were always something that his family was thinking about. It was definitely not a light topic in their family. It was something that they were constantly worrying about. Now, just as a general thought, Dickens, I'm going to take like a brown, kind of bronze shade as my transition color in my crease. Now let me look at my facts here. Now Dickens provided a lot of insight into some specific areas of humanity that other authors just didn't do until he started doing it. He brought a lot of attention to lower classes and the things that they were struggling with. And he also brought to attention children who, until this time, were kind of just seen and not heard until they were adults, and then they were considered like actual humans. And this is a totally different topic that I could get into. Actually, it could be a whole different video. But children were raised by nurses. Like, they weren't even really raised by their parents until they like became of age and were basically like an asset to the family. And so he basically created and let people know that, like, hey, children are real people and have feelings that are valid. And until this point, like, childhood wasn't really a thing. I was listening to a documentary where they basically said, like, Charles Dickens created childhood. Like, he's the reason that childhood became what it is today. Like, he really brought a lot of things to light that people didn't take seriously or didn't even realize before his writings became famous. Early on in Dickens' life, his father was imprisoned to debtor's prison. Now that's not awesome. So I'm trying to decide if I should use this or if I should go in with a shadow. I might try to use this. We'll just see how this goes, okay, you guys? Okay, I feel like I do this every time. I'm like, I'm gonna use this pencil or this cream, and it never goes very well. But we're gonna try, okay? Because it's gonna deepen that color the way that we want. So his dad in debtor's prison, and because women weren't really working yet, he had to really step it up as one of a bunch of kids to earn an income. So he started working at a shoe blacking factory. Now we don't really have those anymore. Okay, I'm trying to blend this out and it's going okay, but it's not like swell. That's okay. It's the color I want, which is a bummer. Let's see what happens if I take it right on the brush on this eye. Oh yeah, that definitely does better. Should have done that on this other eye. That's okay. We can fix it somehow, right? Okay, that's looking pretty good. So I tried to kind of even out the eyes. This factory that he worked in was just atrocious conditions. Like, it was not like a super coveted working environment, especially for children. And this is before like children labor laws were a thing, okay? So like child labor was definitely a thing, and it was one of the only ways that families could earn an income, especially if dad was like in prison or sick, something of that nature. Children were able to go to work and provide their family with some income. So I'm just taking that same bronzer and just trying to soften these edges. Dickens said of this experience that it's kind of the turning point when he basically lost his own childhood. After this point, he did not really trust adults. He felt betrayed and abandoned, especially by his dad, who were supposed to take care of him. These adults that he was supposed to look to as caregivers did not do their job. You see these themes. I'm going to take a green shadow in hopes that I can kind of just add to this color, enhance this on the outsides. I'm going to kind of do the halo effect. So I'm going to put this green shadow on the inner corner, crease, and outer corner, because I want the gold to still pop through the middle there. So that theme of feeling like abandoned, especially by adults and kids having to kind of take responsibility for their own lives, that theme is in a lot of his books. Now throughout this time, he's in and out of school, obviously, because he was working. At one point, after the shoe blacking situation, he got a job as a clerk that eventually kind of like he was able to look back and see kind of launched his writing career, because he was a clerk at a journalist office. Within a year of being hired, he was starting to submit certain articles and sketches that were getting published and viewed by, obviously, the higher-ups, and so he started getting to publish more and more, and that obviously contributed greatly to his desire for writing, but also his success. I'm going to take that same bronzer color again and blend out this green I just put on. Now during this time, he also decided that he wanted to test out his acting chops, and the love for the theater is something he never, I don't want to say like gave up or even like grew out of. Like, he always loved it, and even later in his life, he would do theatrical readings of his own books, and people would just like flock to see them. I'm going to take some gold on my finger here and just tap it in the center of this lid. That's pretty. This reminds me of the pirate look I did, where I did black, but then I added gold to the middle of the lid. If you've been watching my Haute History videos, you know what I'm talking about. Ooh, I do like that. So when he published A Christmas Carol, he felt very strongly that it was published a certain way. that the book itself, I think it was red, not green, but it had gold, like foiled illustrations on it, and it was apparently beautiful. So that's, the gold is what inspired this. Okay, now we're gonna go in with a new primer. I'm gonna use this e.l.f. Pore Pretty primer. I've heard amazing things about it, and I'm excited to try it. So we're gonna put it on my very pory areas. The most, okay, hang on, we gotta wipe off some of this excess green and gold that's happening here. Now in 1834, Dickens met the woman who would later become his wife, and they had, I think, like 10 children. They had a lot of kids. And they didn't actually stay married forever, which I find sad. So he and his wife had a mutual parting of ways, but I'm so sad about it. Primer feels really nice. I've heard awesome things about it, so I'm excited that I'm getting to try it. Also, I have some redness, but my foundation is hopefully full coverage enough that it kind of takes care of it. So they got engaged in 1835 and then got married in 1836. Now, a part of his life to note is that he took a trip at one point to America, and he was very much, an impression was made on him of America, and not a good one. He was not impressed by America, and he later wrote a book about it that was like a complete satire, but Americans were not pleased with that. I'm wearing Bare Minerals Bare Pro foundation in the color champagne that they don't make anymore. But by the time he went to America, he had published enough works that people just loved him. So he was received really, really well. He just thought Americans were just grotesque and ridiculous and not classy, and which, like, let's be honest, he's not totally wrong. Depends on where he was and with whom and things of that nature. One of the main things he was really appalled by was slavery, and I mean, rightly so. And he spoke out against it pretty, like, not very shyly. And so that obviously made an impression on people that did have slaves. And he was also really horrified by the common use of spitting tobacco and how we as Americans were treating the press. Like, he obviously revered it and saw it as an important thing to be respected and used wisely, and I guess he was not pleased with the ways that we were using it, which I don't know the details of that. That would be interesting. If any of you are journalists and want to look into that for me, I would love to hear. I was thinking about doing some color correcting. I don't know if I need to, though. Okay, and before we do any setting of this, we're going to do some contour, and more than I normally do because I want to. I'm going to use a cream product before I set any of this. I'm going to use a cream contour. So by the time Dickens met his mistress, he and his wife had kind of already grown apart. I'm going to use this tart thing. I'm going to put some contour here, bing, 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 around my hairline. And then let's blend that first, and then we'll go on to some smaller contour areas. So by the time he met Ellen, who eventually became his lady friend, his relationship with his wife was already kind of like over, but it definitely was added stress to the situation. So I applied it with that brush and blended out a little bit, but then I'm blending it more with the sponge I already used to kind of mesh some of those colors together. I want to do a little contour on my jawline, just a little. And again, taking that sponge and blending it out. I'm going to take a smaller brush. The brush I was going to use, I already used on my eyes. So I'm going to take a smaller brush, do some contouring on my nose. Just a little. Here. Okay, so I put a little contour on the side, on the bridge of my nose, under here, and a teeny dash in my chin because I think it's funny. Like I said, he started giving some like oratory readings of his books, which again speaks to his love for the theater, and that was in 1858. So he was already established as an author by that point. So people loved to come to those. They definitely thought he was the bomb by that point. Okay, now that I've got my concealer blended out, I'm also turning the page in my notes, this article I'm reading. We're actually almost done with our information. Oh, powder. We want to powder. I'm just taking the powder foundation of the color I'm wearing. I'm going to just go over everything with a big fluffy brush so that it's not super concentrated, but still get product on the face. Okay, and then I'm going to finish off the eyes before I forget. And my eyeshadow is also a little uneven between my two eyeballs, so I'm going to try to even it out a smidge. Okay, at one point, Charles Dickens had a pretty close brush with death. I'm going to take some bronzer. This one's a little bit warmer than I would wear with this look, but it's the one I have in front of me. So I'm just going to take a little bit over that place I put contour before. And I don't know if you've noticed, but all of my face products have been matte. I will put some highlighter on because obvious, but I'm not going crazy with like shimmery, glistening, glowy products. I'm putting on a little blush, rouge. Oh, for my highlight, I want to use this gold Super Shock shadow from ColourPop. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? I want to do my brows, definitely. I also forgot to do my under eyes like I said I was going to. So Charles Dickens was on a train with his mistress and his mistress's wife, I believe. And it went off the rails and he was fine. And so he rescued other people on the train who were not as fine, but it kind of like weakened his system. You know, the delicacies of the time or whatever. He wasn't able to like live life with the same vivacious personality that he always did. I forgot to mention that before. He was kind of crazy. He was very expressive. I'm going to take this concentrated brush for my highlighter because I want to see how it does. He was very expressive. He was sometimes like too much for people to handle sometimes. He was very eccentric. I should have said that from the very beginning. He kind of had like a personality that was like kind of hard for people to keep up with if they weren't like ready for it. So in some ways, I'm sure that impacted, in lots of ways, I'm sure it impacted his relationship with his wife, because when you're living with someone, like that takes a lot. So sometimes I think he was probably like a lot to handle. But apparently he was like an amazing storyteller, and so that probably made him an awesome dad. I'm going to take a little bit of this other highlighter and just pop some on top just to add. Then we're going to add some highlight to my brow bone, because I already forgot that part too. On this kind of fluffy brush. So he was kind of a lot to handle sometimes, and like even his publishers and stuff sometimes were like, wow, Dickens, like you gotta chill out, buddy. And he would take on tasks that seemed like ridiculous and impossible, and he would usually do them, which is great, but one time in his life he missed a deadline. But he published Christmas Carol like beginning to end in 6 weeks. So like he had some gumption. I'm putting this green crayon under my eyes. And I'm not afraid of it being tidy because this is kind of a smoky look anyway. And I do want to match it up. We're not doing like a cat eye, but I want to match it up out here. And so anyway, I say that because after this train wreck, if he had more of like a chill later part of his life, like people probably would have noticed because he was so expressive normally. And then I didn't bring it all the way to the center, or to the middle. I want to put that highlight that I have. It's too big. This might be too big. Maybe not. And so later in his life, he did these touring book readings pretty much up until he died. He, loved doing them, and people liked hearing him, so it worked out really well. He died in June 9th of 1870, and let's do mascara. And I think it was of natural causes. I haven't read anything that was like, it was of this crazy thing. He got to actually see his books published and got to tour telling people about his books and give lectures and read his stuff, like to read things from the actual, hear pieces of a book from the actual author, like that would have been incredible. Because you would have heard the voices and heard everything just as he intended. Now Dickens, because he was so eccentric, but he also loved his writing, he was very consumed by his books. Like in one book it said that he killed a character in the book and like grieved her loss like it was an actual living friend. Also, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I put mascara on the bottom lashes and I don't normally, but I just wanted to see how it would go. And it looks a little spidery to me, but that's okay. Lipstick, I have a couple options here. I have some nudes and I have some browns. I might go with like this mauvey brown I have. I haven't tried it yet. It's called, oh gosh, Hawkwind by Kat Von D. I don't know why I picked this one. Maybe I should have gone with a nude, but I feel like it kind of just fit. Kind of like grounded, earthy, grungy kind of look. Okay, so some of his books that you'll know: Oliver Twist, Christmas Carol, Dealings with a Femme with Dombey and Sons, Bleak House, Tale of Two Cities, Great Expectations. Those are the main ones. Oh, he died of a stroke at 58 in his home in Kent, England, and he's buried at Westminster Abbey. In the Poet's Corner. The things I have to say about Charles Dickens: I think he's an incredible author. I didn't even say many of my personal opinions about his writing. I've gotten to read quite a few of his books, which have been delightful. The way he writes is very human. Like, he doesn't write like a computer. He doesn't write like someone who's too lofty for things, because he has lived some serious dramas, and he had lived through some hardships that kids shouldn't have to live through. And I love that he was like, people don't know that children in these working conditions, people who are reading, who are educated enough to read for fun, have no idea what poverty looks like. And so he really wanted to make sure he painted accurate pictures of what low-class Victorian life was like. I think he did obviously an awesome job of that. Otherwise he wouldn't be famous if he didn't do a good job of that. But also his wordings are clever. He's got multiple genres. He's got histories. He's got really dark, sad books. He's got funny books. Like Christmas Carol is very funny, and I thought portions of Great Expectations were hilarious. Had some serious things to express to upper class Victorian England, and I think he did a good job of it. I think that's all I have to say. This makeup is done. I think it's fun. I think it turned out well. Again, I wanted to kind of mix you can see where I scratched myself. Grungy with glam with full beat, but still some contour. And it's obviously not as intense contour as like reshaping my face, but we'll wait for Halloween to do that. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this and that it was fun to learn about Chucky Dicky. I'm just kidding. I hope no one called him that in his life. Tell me what you think of the makeup. If you recreate any of it, tag me on the gram. I like this lipstick. It's a good in-between of a mauve and a brown. It's like a dark mauve, basically, because I have this brown, but it's definitely more brown than mauve. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye!